Elon Musk wanted to conduct an experiment. Disguised as a homeless man, he carried out this experiment despite the darkness and snowfall. Many people passed by him without paying any attention, but kind-hearted Olivia used her last money to buy food for the homeless man, who was actually Elon. The next morning, Olivia heard a knock on her door. When she opened it, she burst into tears. Truly emotional and shocking events had taken place. Now, let's go back to the beginning and see what happened. Elon Musk was the owner of a fortune that most people couldn't even imagine, and was one of the most powerful names in the tech world. However, recently something was missing: projects that changed the world. Rockets, electric cars, artificial intelligence. While these were all important, Elon paused for a moment and thought, "Do I really think I know everything?" Amidst all his success and power, he had sometimes overlooked people and their real lives. There were hundreds of charities around the world and he donated billions, but he never truly understood enough. To see the real problems, he needed to go deeper. One evening, while sitting alone in his office, an idea suddenly struck him. What if he could see how people, especially the homeless, were treated? He couldn't help but ask himself this question. Elon had always loved conducting ordinary experiments and observations, but this time, it was different. The purpose of this experiment was not just observation, but to understand true empathy. He wanted to see how people treated each other, especially those who were struggling to survive on the streets, those who were poor. He spent a week making plans. In this experiment, he decided that he should be a participant, not just an observer. He wanted to make sure no one would recognize him. Therefore, he carefully decided to alter his appearance. With the help of a professional makeup artist, he tried to make himself look like a homeless man for one night. He paled his face, grew out his beard, wore old, dirty clothes, and transformed into a realistic homeless person, as much as he could walk the streets. After all the preparations, he finally looked at his reflection in the mirror. He was truly unrecognizable. "I must succeed with this," he thought, not backing down for a moment. That night, on a cold Istanbul evening covered in snow, he was ready to go out into the streets. The freezing cold was the perfect time for him to begin his experiment. It was essential that he blend in with the crowd, that no one paid attention to him. Elon realized that without truly understanding the lives of the homeless, without empathizing with them, he wouldn't be able to help them or change their lives. So he had to spend a night on the street without encountering any familiar faces. As he walked on the streets, he felt the growing weight of the snow that covered his body with every step. His feet were numb from the cold. But this was not just an obstacle for him. It was an important piece for achieving the goal of his experiment. The cold made the night dark and gloomy. People, for the most part, were focused only on themselves, oblivious to the world around them. Homeless people were often ignored, disregarded. As he walked slowly, his eyes were filled with questions about the street. What needed to be done to make people understand the suffering of those who had to live through this dark night? No one approached him on the street. No one asked him a question. No one said, "Can I help?" This night was nothing more than the beginning of an experiment. But for him, loneliness was real. As the hours passed, the loneliness he felt became even heavier. He realized how devastating it was to live as a homeless person, in a dark corner with no hope. Many people didn't care about him at all, quickly passing by with their eyes diverted. Some people had become so accustomed to a world where the homeless existed that they didn't even notice whether anyone was on the street. Throughout the night, he decided to endure being alone for a while. He might have been a rich man, but at that moment, he was seeing the world through the eyes of a homeless person. No one understood him. What initially seemed like a fun and exciting experiment was becoming increasingly real for him. His feet were frozen in the icy cold of the snow. Every inch of his skin felt the cold. His body was sending signals of trembling everywhere. At that moment, perhaps the most frightening thing was how indifferent people were to his presence. He felt more deeply than ever how superficial everything really was. By the end of the night, after hours of this lonely experiment, he had learned a real lesson. To learn how to help others on the street, sometimes you had to see the world through someone else's eyes. That night taught him many things about himself and others. Elon could understand how difficult it was to be homeless, but he also felt more clearly the pain of how people ignored this situation. It might have been an experiment, but in a way, it became one of the turning points of his life. Olivia had left her house that day to do some ordinary shopping. The slightly colder weather had made her bracelet-making hobby even more appealing. Her hands would get colder, and her fingers would work faster. Despite her young age, she woke up early in the mornings to manage both her schoolwork and several freelance jobs, and worked late into the evenings. A few days ago, she had finally saved enough money to fulfill her biggest dream in life. Buying a ticket to a concert she had wanted to attend for a long time was, in a way, like reaching freedom for her. The concert ticket was a turning point. It would make her feel free and be a reward for all the struggles and battles she had fought for so long. As she was leaving the market, she was counting the money in her pocket. Yes, she had enough for the ticket, but there was no money left for anything else. After finishing her shopping, she had dreamed of having a coffee to treat herself, despite the cold weather. But as she had calculated earlier, that wasn't possible either. At that moment, by counting the last bit of money in her pocket, she realized she needed to save a little more. Next time, she thought, I should be more careful. Her eyes slowly wandered around. As snowflakes raced to the ground, her attention was suddenly caught by something. Just a few steps ahead, she saw a man lying on the ground in dirty clothes. The man was lying on his back, his eyes closed, motionless. The cold had settled heavily on his clothes, further lowering his body temperature. Olivia took a deep breath. Something started stirring inside her. At that moment, a thought struck her like lightning. How does someone like him, maybe someone who has been lost in this world, feel? It was something that made her reflect. Seeing someone completely isolated from the world had pushed her into a completely different world. Taking one more step forward, she came closer and started to observe carefully. The man's face was covered with a weariness that seemed to have been there for a long time. There was no trembling in his body. It was as if he were either asleep or just struggling to survive. Something stirred inside Olivia. The empathy she felt began to make her think of something else. Maybe this man was fighting just to survive for another day, she thought. At that moment, the plan she had for a concert ticket or perhaps a cup of coffee faded from her mind. The reality that life had presented to her was more important than anything else. Olivia needed to do something with the last bit of money in her pocket. She immediately stopped and took out the last of her change. Despite noticing the doubts appearing on the man's face, she managed to take one more step forward, like stepping into the middle of a river. She had made her decision. Approaching the homeless man, she gently spoke, "Hello, can I help you?" As her words slowly spilled out, she repeated her offer to the man, who was trying to lift his head and look at her from a closer distance. The man's eyes seemed to hold some suspicion about the authenticity of the offer, but Olivia was determined to help him no matter what. The feeling inside her gave her the courage to do the right thing. Counting the money in her hand again, she said, "How about we get some food?" The man's face was initially filled with great astonishment, but soon after, a light of hope appeared in his eyes. Olivia took out the last of her money and suggested they get food from a fast food restaurant. Though she wanted to buy something else, she only had enough for a simple meal, but that didn't worry her. This man needed a meal to warm up, to feel normal, even if only for a few minutes. Without thinking any further, Olivia decided to help him. The two of them slowly made their way to the fast food restaurant. As the man thanked her, Olivia felt happy that she had shown such easy empathy. When they entered the restaurant, the effect of the cold seemed to lessen a bit. While ordering, Olivia started to chat with the man. He said nothing, but Olivia was determined to buy him food. She was doing it purely out of her humane impulse, because there was nothing else to do. At that moment, something much more important than the concert ticket she had dreamed of was happening. As their food arrived at the table, Olivia sat down and ate with the man. The lost hope in the man's eyes slowly gave way to a sense of relief. In their silent exchange, words were lacking, but everything that was there seemed to fall into place. At that moment, it felt like the world was stopping for just Olivia and this man. As they conversed, Olivia was listening to him, and despite the deep emptiness in the man's eyes, he was eating with trust in her. That night, the meaning of life itself was realized, rather than the concert. When they finished their meals, Olivia suggested they go outside. This was one of those rare moments in her life. There was cold outside, and she was spending time with a stranger, but she didn't feel lonely because of it. The man thanked her, and they began walking toward the park together. When they arrived at the park, the ground was covered with snow, but the silence and the cold carried them to another world. As Olivia walked with the man in the park, she didn't notice how time had passed. While chatting, they were simply enjoying the moment. The bond between them was entirely natural. They had allowed each other the time to discover much deeper meaning in life not just for one evening. The deep anxiety inside Olivia had gradually been replaced by a pleasant sense of peace throughout the evening. The man she had spent the night with was unexpectedly kind and understanding. Most people might hesitate to help a stranger, but Olivia had done something so right that the sense of peace within her grew with every passing minute. Yet, at the same time, she couldn't ignore the strangeness of spending time with someone she didn't know. Fortunately, the man remained kind and patient at every moment. Night had fallen outside and the cold had become even more intense. As they walked through the park, the depth of their conversation made Olivia set aside all her fears. Elon openly shared the purpose behind disguising himself as a homeless man. He spoke about how people judge others based on appearance and status, and how sometimes a simple smile or a small act of kindness could make a huge difference. With some difficulty, Olivia spoke about the struggles and goals in her life. Slowly, she shared the hopes and dreams she had kept inside with Elon. As she talked, expressing her thoughts about the concert ticket she had longed for and the places she wanted to visit, she found it strangely easy to be sincere in this moment. She no longer felt like just someone offering help, but like a human being, sharing her own truth. They had so much to talk about. Elon revealed that before becoming homeless, he had been an engineer, but due to life's hardships and mistakes, everything had changed. His story was unlike any of the success stories Olivia had heard before. As he spoke about the struggles of life, the pain, and how easily someone could fall, Olivia found herself growing more and more respectful toward him. As the hours passed, the cold began to affect them both. This walk through the park had become a moment in which they truly recognized each other's souls, forming a bond that went beyond words. There was such a deep sense of trust that Olivia almost felt like she could confess her deepest fears to him. "Why do people become so disconnected from each other?" Elon asked at one point. "Some things change people over time, but sometimes the darkness inside just grows too big." Olivia took a deep breath before she could fully process his words. For a moment, what he had said resonated deeply with her. In a world where people judged others based only on appearances, this kind of depth was truly valuable. She felt a sense of incompleteness and uncertainty, but she trusted Elon more now. With him, she wasn't just someone who helped, she also felt like a friend. The conversation that had lasted all night had somehow erased the differences between their worlds, bringing them closer in a meaningful way. Eventually, it was time for Olivia to return home. Elon sincerely thanked her for the time they had spent together, but Olivia wanted to help him a little more. "If you'd like, you can stay with me for a while," she offered. Elon shook his head and said, "I truly appreciate it, but I always find a way to get by in this world. What matters is knowing that someone genuinely cares about me." Olivia insisted, "But we can still spend more time together. Who knows? Maybe in a few days you'll have a more comfortable place to stay." Elon simply smiled in response, gratitude shining in his eyes. They exchanged one last look before parting ways. Olivia felt as if she were beginning a new chapter in her life. As she slowly closed her door behind her, a warmth filled her heart. That evening, after their long walk in the park, Olivia and Elon sat down at a cafe. They shared their lives, their pasts, and their dreams with each other. Olivia spoke about the hardships she had faced and the struggles she had endured to build her career. Elon, with a sorrowful look in his eyes, shared the merciless realities that life had thrown at him. Though they came from completely different worlds, that night they clung to each other's stories. As they sipped their coffees in silence, they lost track of time. At first, they had seemed like strangers to one another, but as the evening progressed, their bond grew stronger. Elon started to open up more to Olivia, speaking about the shadows of his past and the disappointments he had faced. Olivia, while feeling honored to be part of such a sincere and heartfelt conversation, sometimes found herself in an unfamiliar world. Their lives were so different that, at times, this conversation felt completely foreign to her. Yet, on the other hand, it gave her life a new meaning. Recognizing the depth of their connection, Olivia savored the moment. After a while, Olivia smiled and said, "I think we should spend more time together, don't you?" Elon gave a small smile, and a sense of ease appeared in his eyes. "Yes, time is passing so quickly," he replied. As his eyes met Olivia's, they silently shared a few more moments. The hours they spent at the cafe, simply being in each other's presence, brought them both an unexpected sense of happiness. Spending time together didn't just change their perspectives, it made every moment of life feel more meaningful. Looking into Olivia's eyes, Elon said, "Thank you so much. Talking to you has been wonderful." Olivia couldn't quite put her feelings into words, but she understood exactly what he meant. "Thank you too," she replied. "I never planned to spend so much time with you, but it turned out to be incredibly meaningful." After a while, the air outside had become noticeably colder. Olivia pulled out her phone and checked the time. It was already late. Looking at Elon, she said, "I think we should call it a night. I have to wake up early tomorrow morning." Elon nodded slightly and said, "Of course, but before we part ways, I just want to say one more thing. I'm truly grateful to have met you and spent time with you." Olivia smiled in surprise. The whirlwind of emotions inside her seemed to settle, even if just a little. She knew she would never forget this night, because the bond they had formed was something far deeper than mere friendship. In some way, they had left a mark on each other's lives. At that moment, Olivia felt a warmth in her heart. The understanding and patience in Elon's eyes had given her a new perspective, feeling this was a great revelation for her. The next morning, Olivia's day began differently. The first rays of sunlight helped ease the emotional intensity she had carried from the night before. As she thought about the evening and how precious the time they had spent together was, she realized how much it had lightened the weight of her struggles and heartbreaks. That was why, as she started her day, she felt a little more optimistic. However, that morning, Olivia was about to encounter something that would change her life in an instant. Around 10 a.m., there was a knock on her door. She hurried to open it and found herself face to face with a group of well-dressed men in suits. Her heart began to race. The men stood at her doorstep, and Olivia had no idea who they were. One of them stepped forward and introduced himself. "Good morning. We are Mr. Musk's attorneys. We need to deliver this envelope to you." As Olivia listened in shock, they carefully handed her the envelope. A flood of questions filled her mind. "Mr. Musk? Elon Musk? But that's impossible. The man I met was just Elon, and he was homeless." The envelope had only one thing written on it: Mr. Musk. Olivia hesitated for a moment before opening it. As she read the contents, she realized that her entire world was about to change. One of the lawyers summarized the letter. "Mr. Musk has decided to make a significant gesture of support for you. He is granting you a large sum of money to become the owner of one of the most prestigious restaurants in the city. Additionally, there will be certain expectations as part of this agreement. However, this offer is being presented to you in a very special way, as you are someone he considers truly deserving." Olivia stared at them in disbelief, her hands trembling as she held the letter. "What? Is this real?" she whispered. The lawyers exchanged glances before one of them nodded. "Yes, Mr. Musk gave this decision great thought and ultimately wanted to reward you. Your act of kindness has deeply inspired him. This is his way of expressing his gratitude." Tears welled up in Olivia's eyes. She could hardly contain her emotions. "But I just helped a stranger. How is this possible?" she asked, her voice shaking. One of the lawyers smiled gently. "That was entirely Mr. Musk's choice. Your selflessness meant more to him than you could imagine." Her eyes filled with tears, and she struggled to process the overwhelming wave of emotions crashing over her. A stranger had not only changed her life, he had given her something beyond kindness. Something beyond gratitude. Years had passed. Olivia's life had taken an entirely different direction because of a small yet meaningful act of kindness on that cold winter night. At first, she had simply followed her heart, helping a man she believed to be homeless. But without realizing it, she had opened a door that would change her life forever. That night, what she experienced turned her into a millionaire overnight. Elon Musk had rewarded Olivia's genuine kindness, gifting her a substantial sum of money and a luxurious restaurant in the city center. At first, Olivia thought it was some kind of joke. How could her life change so drastically just like that? But as time passed, she found herself walking the fine line between reality and a dream. Taking over the restaurant was one of the biggest challenges of her life. Despite having money and a prestigious business, what mattered to her was not wealth, but creating meaning. She couldn't use this great opportunity just to accumulate riches, because she was someone who valued the small things in life. She hadn't forgotten the struggles she once faced. That's why she didn't turn her restaurant into an exclusive place for the elite. Instead, she saw it as a gateway for those who truly needed a chance. Her first decision was to provide free meals for the homeless every day. When she opened the doors, many people hesitated to step inside, believing there was no place for them in such a luxurious establishment. But Olivia's warm smile and her words, "You are all welcome here," gradually put them at ease. Over time, the restaurant became filled not only with wealthy customers, but also with people Olivia had reached out to. This initiative created a ripple effect. Soon, people from all over the city began talking about Olivia's restaurant. The media covered her extraordinary business model, and thousands shared her story on social media. But for her, the most important thing was making people feel at home. No one should go hungry. No one should feel alone. Because she, too, had once gone through difficult times and learned to find happiness in the little things. That's why, in her restaurant's kitchen, not only professional chefs work, but also a team of former homeless individuals. She wanted to give them a chance at a new life. Most of the people she hired had spent years living on the streets, believing that no one would ever trust them. But Olivia had given them a chance, and they made the most of it. One day, an elderly man walked into the restaurant. He wore an old coat, and his hands trembled. Olivia immediately approached him and extended her hand. "Welcome. You can order anything you'd like," she said kindly. The man couldn't hold back his tears. "No one has treated me like this in years," he whispered. In that moment, Olivia once again realized just how meaningful her actions truly were. Over the years, her restaurant grew. It became more than just a dining establishment. It turned into a force for good in the community. Many major companies started supporting her vision. Olivia donated a significant portion of her earnings to charity. She built housing for the homeless, created job opportunities, and continued to expand her mission. One evening, a special event was being held in the restaurant's VIP lounge. As Olivia entered, she noticed everyone standing up in respect. People no longer saw her as just a restaurant owner. They saw her as a hero. But for her, the greatest reward was the gratitude shining in their eyes. Around midnight, she stepped onto the restaurant's terrace. The city lights competed with the stars in the sky. A cold breeze blew. She paused for a moment, lost in thought. If she had made a different choice that night, if she had ignored that man, what kind of life would she have now? A familiar voice spoke behind her. "You look deep in thought." She turned around to see Elon Musk smiling at her. Olivia smiled back. "I'm just thinking about the past, that night, how it all began." Elon nodded. "You know, Olivia, that night didn't just change your life, it changed mine too. You reminded me that kindness still exists in this world. You're one of those rare people who bring hope." Olivia turned her gaze back to the city lights. A deep sense of peace filled her, because she knew that what she had done wasn't just charity, it was the beginning of real change. And that night, Olivia's story was no longer just her own. She had become a symbol of inspiration for thousands. True kindness is like a light that grows when it touches someone's life, and Olivia had ignited that light. Our story is up to here. For more videos about Elon Musk, you can like the video and subscribe to my channel. See you later.